ready to celebrate?
Whoa.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another hashtag Celebrate Columbus show. My name is Josh Burnett, and as you can see, we're joined by two awesome community guests today. I'm so excited to be back here at the Columbus Area Chamber of Commerce. I've been away for a couple months now. We've started our business and we've got our own studio on Washington Street, but because of this woman and because of the Chamber of Commerce, we were able to have such an amazing backdrop, and I just want to thank you for that. We're really excited about today's conversation. I'm sure that you know the two people who are on camera today, but just in case you don't, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to this great lady here to introduce herself and what we're doing today. Thank you for getting us together.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm Cindy Fry. I'm the president of the Columbus Area Chamber of Commerce, and we are joined today by Harry McCawley. And Harry McCawley started at the Republic
1966.
66 as a sports editor.
Sports editor.
And then rose up through the ranks and retired in 2014 as the associate editor. And I thought it would be really great to get together with someone who has had a front row seat in the development of our community, and someone who is a little bit fresher and newer to the adult world of Columbus, even though you grew up here. Reading Harry's column in the mornings helped me appreciate the city I live in, helped me understand the history of our community, and gave me lots of reasons to celebrate Columbus. So I thought this would be a really cool thing to bring the two of you together, since Josh has made it his work to help people remember why this is an important place. And he's sort of carrying on your legacy into the next generation. So I think it's really special to be sitting here with you. Josh, you've been steeped in that history because your family's so rooted here and you grew up here. But I know your perspective is developing as you get to know the community. So, and I've been here about 22 years, so I sort of span the middle of your experiences here in Columbus. So I wanted to start off talking about onions and orchids. So onions and orchids is that part of the Republic, that sort of second page where people sound off about things they like or don't like. Right. And it was sort of the precursor to social media, which is where we tend to see a lot of that activity today. So, Harry, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how orchids and onions got started. What's your knowledge of that?
Unfortunately, it goes back a long ways. And probably the social media was a feeder of orchids and onions because we offered anonymity. And actually, it can even said to have gone back as far as almost the history of the newspaper, that letters to the editor, people could write letters to the editor, and if they chose to say they wanted to be anonymous or have a pseudonym or some kind to go by, that the newspaper granted them that freedom. And really, as far as letters to the editor, it wasn't until the 1990s that we changed that policy and required people to provide their name and address. We later modified it to John Jones of Columbus. And then this thing started coming with orchids and onions and the business with the internet and the social media, and this attitude that I could just say anything because I'm protected. And we got some unfortunate submissions and letters to the editor. That's when we changed to requiring them that. Unfortunately, we also, in this newspaper, we opened up same time we went into a website of our own, we opened up the opportunity for people to comment in another segment of the paper. And we got more of a web chat room than anything else. And unfortunately, that came to the point where they got very personal and very particular about what they said. So we edited those submissions that were going into the paper. We didn't edit those that went online. They did set up some methods to monitor things so that they didn't completely go beyond the rules of society. But even then, it didn't work out very well. So we dropped that from the newspaper due to a lot of complaints. However, we still have Orchids and Onions. It is, sadly, one of the most popular pieces in the newspaper. Interestingly, when we required letter writers to use their full name and address, letters to the editor dropped significantly, except in elections where they're not afraid to say anything. So it's one of those things that I think if you would ask the people at the newspaper who've been there for a while what they thought of Orchids and Onions, they'd want to drop them. The reality is, readers want them.
They want them.
So.
Well, you know, you both strike me as orchid people. So I am going to ask you, what kind of orchid would you like to send out to our community today? If you were going to send an orchid, what do you think is worth celebrating? What kind of orchid would you send?
For me, it's a daily practice of mine to try to celebrate something, someone, or some place in Columbus. So to be honest, I'd be celebrating a lot and I'd be doing a lot of orchids. But really, I would celebrate most recently the excitement that is going on, that's about to start. You know, we're taping this at the very tail end of July, but in August, when Exhibit Columbus is going to be here, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of excitement. And then, you know, the movie Columbus is going to be coming out, and so I would just celebrate how much is going on right now to really promote the special place that we live in. I just think the rest of the year is just going to be really exciting. I know there's been some big things with the overpass recently and kind of getting that started to where we're going to be a part of the solution. That was a huge deal. There's just some really exciting things going on. So for me, if you had pressed me to one, I would say I'm really excited that Richard McCawley and the Exhibit Columbus group are going to be having an amazing August.
That's great. What about you, Harry?
Well, I guess I'd celebrate how far we've come in what is a relatively short period. 50 years may not seem like a short time for a lot of people, but the Columbus that I came to in 1966 is so vastly different than the Columbus that we have today. In so many ways. We talk about the architecture, which is very obviously an important element in it, but I also think back to the times that black people would have to go to Indianapolis to get haircuts. That black people couldn't rent an apartment in Columbus because the landlords didn't want to rent to black people. It seems unbelievable in today's society. You say that and people think, you're talking about the Civil War or something like that that's still going on. And I'm thankful. I think that I would compliment the city, not just J. Erwin Miller, who obviously was a driving force behind many of these changes, but so many others who along the way have come along and in a variety of ways have helped bring about this change that we have today. We've still got a ways to go. I don't think there's any question about that. And there are pockets of the community that a lot of us probably wish weren't here, but they are, and so you have to deal with them, and I think they're dealing with them very well right now. But when you look back from that kind of a perspective, it's remarkable what's happened here.
I think it's interesting that, Harry, you want to celebrate how far we've come, and Josh wants to celebrate how far we're going. Like that's
Sure.
He's really looking forward to that
Sure.
what's to come, and I think that's why I wanted the two of you to get together. I don't really want to lose that appreciation of the vision it took to get us here, and I hope it inspires us to have that same kind of vision to take the community forward.
There's one thing I think, and I would just say this, that I hope we don't lose that perspective or that insight into how far we've come, because I've seen so many instances where the civil rights marches in the 50s and the 60s that took place, and the things that those people went through. In today's generation, I don't detect a great amount of understanding among younger people especially of what those people experienced. So those young people of today could have what they have. You know, it seems remarkable that someone would say that blacks had to go through this in Columbus 50 years ago. And that was changed. But it's up to the upcoming generation to make sure that that awareness of that change continues. Because to lose that sight into what was done then, it would be a crime as far as I'm concerned.
And that work for equality is
Yeah.
not done, clearly.
No, it's, you know,
Clearly
it
not
must
finished.
continue. Because if you lose sight of that, then you lose the impetus to go on and continue with what was done. So,
It's important that
It is.
everyone get to participate and have the same opportunity.
and have the knowledge and I guess the institutional knowledge of what makes this community work. I just hope that there are people, you know, and Josh is clearly one of them, standing in the wings to take over that responsibility.
Move it forward.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have anything to say about that, Josh? No pressure.
Well, I think it's a really good, Harry, just as a reminder, you know, understanding, I'm hearing you say that, and also knowing who's watching this. I think that's really good for us to always remember that, even though we weren't there, to seek out people like yourself and others that have worked very hard to make Columbus what it is today. Because we're really looking forward to what it's going to become, but in order to keep going in that direction, we have to find out what brought us here.
Sure.
You know, before we can go forward, we have to look back and learn from that.
I should probably enter a spoiler alert to this situation, but I think a good tool to obtain some of that knowledge is a project which I was involved with, but was really started by Randy Tucker, retired public relations executive of Cummins Engine Company then. And it's The Columbus Way, and it's a book that details, and the writers are the people who were involved in these various projects. And it details how these projects came to be, not just on well, we know we had a problem in this area, so we set out to solve it, but it gets into the nuts and bolts of how it was done and how it was solved. And it's available, by the way, at the Heritage Fund, and I think the Viewpoint Bookstore has it as well. And all the money goes back to the Heritage Fund. But you know, having that detailed knowledge of what it took to get some of these things done, which everybody takes for granted nowadays. Columbus Regional Hospital, for instance, there was a tremendous amount of time, energy, in addition to money, devoted to bringing that kind of a facility to our community. And it took place 25 years ago, I guess. But it's important to know how that came about and who deserves credit for it. And it was, you know, a diverse group of individuals and organizations that did it.
And you're talking about the structure, the new hospital.
Yeah, the new, and not just the structure, but also the change in philosophy. Before it was Columbus Regional Hospital, it was Bartholomew County Hospital. And the outreach was primarily to people within Bartholomew County. And now it has become a regional health center. And because of that, they're able to provide services which previously people would have to go to Indianapolis, Cincinnati, or Louisville for. And we now have a cancer center. And believe me, that is so important to be able to drive a few blocks, a few miles for treatment than to have to endure a trip to Indianapolis, Louisville, or Cincinnati. And, you know, it's a remarkable change. And there was resistance to it, too. But people said, well, this is our hospital. We want to keep it our hospital. Well, sure, you can keep it your hospital. You're not going to have the same services that you really need to have, but if you wanted just to serve Bartholomew County people, that's okay with us. And there were people on the Board of Trustees who decided that we're going to do this. There's a tremendous amount of money, tremendous amount of bringing different groups together. And I think that's how Columbus has come to be what it is. There's this kind of internal system set up, if you will, where you could pick up the phone and say, hey, we've got this problem here. The guy at the other end will say, okay, I think I know a way to help you out. And it's often referred to as the private-public partnership. Well, it worked pretty darn well for what we have today. I know that there have been some people who criticized it and called it the good old boy network, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to get into politics, but it really is an important thing to have people who will pick up the phone and listen to what your problem is, and then find a way to set about
Right.
solving it.
Right. We talk about collaboration a lot, don't we?
Yeah, I think, I hate the word collaboration. It's such an off-putting word to me. But
What word would you use?
Well, I don't know. I don't have a better one at hand. I think that if I have a legacy, I would want it to be to find a word that is better to use in collaboration. But I'm still working on that.
So you're really talking about what makes the city tick.
Yeah, right.
And I think Josh has seen some of that. You've had some experiences with asking community leaders to get involved in different things. And what's your experience been?
It's been really amazing just to see how everyone can work together through the private and public partnerships, as well as just seeing how city leaders can put what's best for our community first above maybe sometimes what could have been personal gain when people work together. It's just been amazing. You talked about Heritage Fund, being a very large private investor in our community in the social sector for a long time, and then with your guys here at the Chamber of Commerce and the way that you support the private sector, it's been amazing. Every single person that I meet, there's things that can be better, but every time that I meet someone new, I think, wow, we're really blessed to live in the community that we do, because people really understand how we all need each other in order to keep things going and to make them better.
I think that if there's one thing that I could ask for people to do who come up with initiatives, is to have someone document it. Because there are so many instances that I've encountered in the past where great things are done, but no one really sat down and documented how it was accomplished and who was involved. And part of it is giving due credit to whoever was participating. But the bigger part of it is to, I think, serve as an inspiration or a model for other groups. Because it's amazing that while your mission might seem different than the mission of the group you're studying, that there might be some things in there that you could use to facilitate whatever it is you're taking on. And I bring back the Columbus Way book. Thank goodness we had people who were documenting this who could write to the subject and write about what happened, who were still alive. But we're losing people like that. And it's not just up to one individual, it's not up to a historian or whatever you want to call them, it's up to the individuals within that organization. And I would strongly urge them to keep some kind of a record so that it would be available for people to have. I've been involved in doing histories of various organizations in the community, and there have been some, quite frankly, that, believe it or not, it's not because of this bald head, but if I had hair, I would have pulled it, because there was nothing I had to go on to write that history. Chamber of Commerce was different. I did have something to work with. But, if you have this, that's the only way you can pass information on.
I want to talk about that Chamber historical document that that you kind of took the first chapter and added sort of the more
Right.
recent section.
More of an update to
More of an
what Bob
update.
Marshall had done originally.
And I agree, it's important to know the history. And when I read the history of the Chamber of Commerce, I'm really inspired because I know that in 1890 there was a group of dedicated people, business leaders in the community, who had some big ideas about where they wanted the community to go. And I think about the 1890s when maybe the courthouse was 2 years old, and there were,
Actually, it was about 20 years old. But
I thought it was 1888.
It was 1874 was when it was
Oh,
opened.
thank you. It was a young courthouse, and it wasn't a developed community.
Right.
What, dirt
Right.
roads? I'm not
Exactly.
sure we had electricity readily available.
Yeah, no,
So
that's
I just think about, it was really a little pioneer town, and the vision that they had of being this great community, and the courthouse is a symbol of that, because
Sure.
they built such a grand courthouse. But that inspires me to know that even back then, people were thinking about where we're going, and that it's my job to help take us forward.
Yeah, and you mentioned the courthouse, it's had a checkered history, and I think it speaks to leadership, though, that it's hard to imagine. I still can't understand how they did it, how they came up with the money to do it. But they built this fantastic edifice, which interesting. I once asked Mr. Miller, J. Irwin Miller, what his favorite building in Columbus was, and he said the courthouse, which set me back a little bit there. But it's such I think a model for what he did later. But whoever the commissioners were then, and their names are up on above the front door, then I think people should say a prayer of thanks to them that they took the chance and built this. But as time progressed, we sometimes encountered other leaders who didn't quite follow the mission. I just remember one instance where they had a problem with a leaking roof on one of the towers, and so either the commissioners or the county council, a member of the commissioners or the county council, suggested lop off the tower as a remedy to it, and just put a simple roof on there. Well, it would have changed the courthouse a little bit,
Yeah.
dramatically. And fortunately, there were some people with common sense who suggested that might not be a good idea, so they went ahead and invested the money into it. But, I come back to the theme that people deserve credit for what they did in bringing this about. And it doesn't go back to just 1960, but it even goes back to 1874 when they were building it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Josh mentioned how excited he is about Exhibit Columbus. And I can remember in the 22 years I've lived here when we unveiled a new sculpture or a new building or a new bridge, and it wasn't embraced immediately, right? In fact, I think I've read that when First Christian opened, someone said, well, we live in a factory town, so we should have a church that looks like a factory. It just makes sense. It's sort of facetious in that comment. What do you think what do you anticipate the reaction will be to Exhibit Columbus when these structures start to go up?
I'm not sure. And let me say, first of all, that Richard McCawley has just done a tremendous job in putting not just Exhibit Columbus, and it's not just Richard McCawley.
It's his team, yeah.
But he's assembled a great team, and he's got people from other organizations, coming together to work on this, which is, so critical to it. I'm not sure, that it's going to have the same kind of an impact on the community as individual projects would be. I think that there are so many things involved in Exhibit Columbus, from what I've read and studied, that it may be difficult for people to latch on to one and say, "My gosh, that's exciting." On the other hand, it gives people a choice of looking at things and saying, "Wow, that's that," and it might even build, it might even build momentum for some of the elements of it. And I don't think I think everybody's realistic in recognizing that we're going to make this is going to be what Columbus of the future is going to look like, because it would probably be pretty difficult to create all of these exhibits. But the other issue is, who are the people of Columbus today as opposed to 1966? And it's a very diverse community, believe me, far more diverse than 1966. And will there be a sense of ownership to it? Will there be groups and individuals who will say, let's make this happen? And I think that's the promise of Exhibit Columbus. And it will probably be the proof in the pudding of the vision of Richard and his team. I'm just glad to see people like Richard come forward because it's, quite frankly, representative of the new leadership. And there have been various periods in our history where the old generation, so-called older generation of leaders, steps to the side and everybody says, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? These kids don't know what they're doing. By gosh, they come along and do some pretty neat things. And I think, the programs like this, getting people talking, on social media. I have my differences with social media being from the print industry, but that's how people are getting their news today, and that's how influences are being made. And it's so very, very important that there be these younger people like Josh and Richard, so many others who have a stake in this, not just a personal stake, but a stake to the love of the community that make a difference.
We're thrilled to be kind of the home for the Columbus Young Professionals group, a group we support. A lot of hardworking volunteers in that group doing fantastic things, helping other employees get to know the community, helping with onboarding. They worked with interns this summer so that those who are interning in our community could see there are young people doing really interesting things in Columbus. So I know I'm very hopeful when I look around and see the work of that group and the lasting effect that they're having.
I don't think there's any question about the value of organizations like that, but I think it's important that the current group of leaders, if you will, make an effort to reach out to that group of young professionals and to integrate them now in the decision-making process. And it's also important, I think, for the young professionals and other groups of that generation to try to become part of the process themselves. I'm not saying, sign yourself away or, sell your life for $1 million or whatever, although $1 million, that's it. Pretty interesting. But, it's important that we go through some kind of a transition period. And I think that the effort should be made to not only include them in the process, but make that inclusion something meaningful other than, we just wanted you to see how this works, so now you know, so we'll see you.
Yeah.
Get them involved.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. How's that experience for you, Josh? Do you feel like people want you involved?
Yeah, man, it's been amazing, this show and my sort of column, so to speak, of talking about Columbus has really provided me with some unique opportunities to be invited to be a part of groups with the Chamber and the Young Professionals, with Heritage Fund, with the Visitor Center, with City Hall. I think one of the things that people my age, I would want everyone to know is those people that are older are looking for people our age to be involved, and they're very quick to give you opportunities to be a part of it if you just show that you're interested. And really, if you say, hey, I want to be a part of making Columbus better, you can get involved really quickly. Mm-hmm. So for me and for our team, really, we've just been welcomed with open arms.
Great. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, I think at the beginning, you made an interesting observation about Josh and his being born and raised here in Columbus. And I, for a number of years, have been going out to various groups talking. And I forget when I started this process, but when I came to Columbus, I sort of felt like the odd man out. That it's kind of like going off to college thinking I won't know anybody and they won't like me, et cetera, et cetera. And I came into Columbus thinking, well, here I go into a place where inbreds, we got generations of people, everybody knows everybody and they don't welcome newcomers. And so at this first group, I was searching for a way to open it, and so I decided, it was a group, I think about 15 or 20 older women. And I said, how many of you were born and raised in Bartholomew County? And thinking that it would be a full house of hand raising, and only 3 people raised their hands. The other group, 12 or so, had come from someplace else. So I continued thinking this was an oddball group, and so I continued that with other groups. And the numbers held steady, that the vast majority of the people who were in positions of influence in Columbus had come from someplace else. And a major part of that came from the fact that in the 1950s and 60s that Cummins and Arvin and a number of the other leading businesses in the community had started recruiting drives, trying to bring young, experienced workers to their community, professionals. And it was not just, I think there was a mutual recognition on the part of the business leaders that it's not going to take care of us if we just offer them a nice salary and benefits and everything like that. We had to give them a pretty good community in which to live and raise their families. And quite frankly, one story I remember, a well-known executive in the community came to Columbus and he had to park at 3rd Street, and this was before the Commons went up, when that area for the Commons was pretty much of a ghetto city. And he left his wife in the car while he went in for the interview, so she had to sit there looking at this scene. And he came back in and said, well, they offered me a job. And she said, please tell me you didn't accept it, because that was her first impression of Columbus. But what they did was that there was, I think, led by Cummins, there was a decision made that we got to do something about Columbus. We got to remake it, in essence. And so these people came in, and led by people like Mr. Miller and the folks at Arvin and Hamilton Costco, that a lot of these people got so involved in the community that they didn't see Columbus as a way station on a resume, that they saw Columbus as a place that people wanted to live and stay. And they did. And it's really, really remarkable, to the point now that that generation is passing on Josh, who decides, I not only want to stay here in Columbus, I want to be a part of Columbus. I want to be a part of making better and making it better and building upon it. Yeah. And I think, that's pretty good testament to not only the city and the community, but to people who are willing to take on that continued responsibility.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.